Okay, welcome. This is lesson unit 10, day 2, which is all about percent proportions and equations. So our learning target for today is I can create proportional equations and find their solutions. So we're going to be finding answers today by setting up proportions. So here we go. Solving problems with percentages. Percentages are used frequently in real life and can be solved in two ways. Set up a percent proportion. So let's go ahead and write this out. Let's set up a percent proportion, and that's all of today's lesson actually. Using the formula below, so right there, and then solve like a proportion. So we will take a ratio like this, a part over the whole, and then we will set it equal to a number over 100. So first step, plug in the given values into the percent equation, and then solve for the missing value. So just so you know, the part is going to equal a percentage or as a decimal or whole. So we'll talk a little bit more about this. Let's go ahead and try out the first problem. It says use a percent proportion or a percent equation to set up and solve the problems below. So here's our first question. The 7th grade class held an end of the year dance. Of the 300 7th graders, so I'm going to start setting this up right now. We know there's 300 7th graders. 246 decided to attend. So right now we have our fraction. We have our part over the whole. 246 students, that's the part. The whole number of students is 300. What percent of the 7th grade class attended the end of year dance? So here's how we're going to set up this proportion. We put an equal sign, and we say that's going to be equal to 100 over some other number. So you could put a variable, you could leave it blank, you could put an X or a question mark, and this number will end up being a percentage once we figure out what it is. Okay, now here's how we're going to solve this. So I'm going to go and change my color. What you could do is solve this just how we did in our past assignment. You could say, what do I do to go from 100 to 300? Well, I multiply by 3. And to go from 300 to 100, I divide by 3. So if I do the same thing to the top and I divide 246 by 3, let's go ahead and see what I get. 246 divided by 3 gives me 82. So I know my answer on the top is going to be 82 because this is a proportional relationship. And 82 over 100, I'll go ahead and write this out, is the same thing as 82 divided by 100, and if you do that, you're going to get 0.82. Well, if we had to move that and change it over to a percentage, you would take your decimal and move it 2 places to the right, and now all of a sudden we have 82% would be our answer. X equals 82%. So the reason I wrote a percentage sign up here on the top of our fraction is because our answer will turn into a percentage. Another way that you could have solved this, and once again, I've already talked about this, but I'll say it again because I like it so much. My students like to solve proportions this way. I would say for the most part, they like to do 100 times 246 divided by 300 will give you your answer. 100 times 246 divided by 300, and that would give me 82. So I know my answer is going to be 82 out of 100, which is the same thing as 82%. All right, let's go ahead and try the next problem. Question number 2 says, a farmer decides to sell 32 pounds of his small 96-pound potato crop. So our part is going to be 32 pounds, and the whole is going to be 96 pounds. What percent of the crop did he sell? So we're saying out of 100, what percent did he sell? Now we can solve this just like normal. So you could do 96 divided by 100. Let's see what we get. And I like to show you multiple ways that you could solve this. 96 divided by 100 is 0.96. Let's see. That means to go from 100 to 96, I'm dividing by 0.96. And to go from 96 to 100, I'm timesing by 0.96. No, that's not right. Okay, let me redo that. So to solve this one thing that you could do, and I actually forgot to mention this in the first problem. Let's go ahead and take a look at this first problem because there's actually a really cool way that we can solve this. And I'm going to use a different color blue. What you could do is you could say 246. Oh no, it didn't switch colors. Okay, and then back to this color. There we go. Yeah, what you could have done also is 246 divided by 300. Whatever answer you get, times that by 100. So let's do that. 246 divided by 300. Next step, multiply it by 100, and I just got 82. So let's go ahead and try that on the second problem because that's kind of a cool way to solve this. So far I've given you 3 ways, and it will work every single time. 32 over 96. Let's see what that comes to in a decimal form. 32 divided by 96, and I get 0.33 repeated. And the next thing that you can do is times it by 100 and you'll get your answer of x. So that's kind of a cool way. Let's see, I'm going to do times 100 and I get 33.33 repeated. And so that's my answer in a percent. I would say x equals 33.33. I'm going to erase that and show you again what other students could do. To switch colors on here, it's a little bit tricky. Okay, you could do 100 times 32 divided by 96, and that will also give you your answer of 33.33, which is really cool. Let's go ahead and move on to the next question. I'm trying to think of what other way I could use to show you. Oh, there we go. Okay, the other way that I was going to show you, and I'll erase that green really quick, is you could say, what did I do to go from 96 to 100? Because this is a proportional relationship, it should work every single time. What you do to the bottom, you have to do to the top. So you could say, I'm multiplying 96 by what to get to 100? Well, the only way to figure out is to do 100 divided by 96. And I just got 1.041. So I'm just showing you like your third option of how you could try and solve this. So what this means is if I multiply 96 by 1.041, I'll get 100. If I multiply the top by the same exact thing, 32 times 1.041, I should get my answer. So let's go ahead and try that. 32 times 1.041 gives me 33.31. It gives me a really, really, really close answer. So that's another way that you could do this, but it was just a little bit different. So what I would say is do 100 times 32 divided by 96 to get your answer. So kind of cool that there are so many different ways to solve this. Yeah, let's go ahead and try the next problem. Number 3, on an average Saturday, 15% of tickets sold are child tickets. If there were 460 tickets sold on Saturday, how many were sold to children? So now we're going to be working backwards, it looks like, which is kind of cool. So let's start out. They're already telling us on an average Saturday, 15% of the tickets that were sold are children's tickets. Well, percentages are always out of 100. And if 15% were sold, that means I'm going to set this up and say 15 out of 100. They say if there were 460 tickets sold on Saturday, how many were sold to children? And now we can solve this just like a normal equation. So I'm going to do 460 times 15 divided by 100, and that will give me my answer. And I'll show you using these colors, just like that. 460 times 15 divided by 100. Another way that you could solve this, sorry for those of you who are bored, I know I've given like 3 ways. You could do 15 divided by 100. Let's see what we get. 15 divided by 100 gives me 0.15. And then all you have to do is times that by 460. And I got 69. So that means my answer right here would be 69 children's tickets. That's what is sold. 69 tickets for children. Okay, question. And sorry, the third way that I could show you to do this is you would do 460 divided by 100, 4.6. That means what I do to the bottom, so if I times the bottom by 4.6, I would have to times the top by 4.6. You take your pick. There's 3 or 4 options I've at least shown you for these last 3 questions. For the rest, I'm going to solve them using my simple trick that my students love to use, just to kind of shorten this video a little bit. So question number 4, the campus demographics include 480 female students. This represents 64% of the student body. How many students are enrolled? They're wanting to know how many students is the whole if they're giving you the part. Well, we know that it's 64% of students and a percentage is out of 100. So now let's go ahead and solve this one. And if I were to do this using a different color, let's use red. I would do 480 times 100 divided by 64 will give me my answer. Another way that you could solve this is you could say, what am I doing to go from 480 to 64? So I'm going to do 480 divided by 64. That gives me 7.5. I'm going to write that out right here. That means to go from 64, I'm timesing by 7.5 and I'll get 480. If I do that to the bottom as well, that will give me my answer. So that's a really cool way to realize that these relationships are proportional. So let's do 100 times 7.5. That's giving me 750. So that just means that our answer is going to be X is equal to 750 students. Now, I haven't talked about it in this video, but one way to tell if these relationships are actually proportional and just double check your work is you could take your numerator, so 64, and divide it by your denominator, which is 100, and you will get a decimal. 64 divided by 100 gives me 0.64. Well, if I do that over here, my numerator of 480 divided by my denominator of 750, let's go ahead and just double check. 480 divided by 750, and I get 0.64. Well, guess what? Those two are equal, so yes, this is a proportional relationship. But my answer is still X is equal to 750. So I didn't want to show you that to confuse you. I just wanted to show you that because if you are a student who likes to double check your answers before you submit them or turn in your work, that's a really good way. All right, let's move on to the next question, which is question number 5. Trisha made a 56% on her science test. If she got 14 problems correct, how many questions were on the test? So what they're doing here is they're giving us a part, and the part is 14. What they're not giving us is the whole. They're telling us that the percentage she got was 56 out of 100. So let's go ahead and solve this. You could say, what do I do to go from 14 to 56? And then you're going to do the same on the bottom. Or to go from 56 to 14. Well, I would do 56 divided by 14. That gives me 4. So I know that if I divide the top and bottom by the same number, 4, it will give me my answer. 100 divided by 4 gives us 25. So X is equal to 25. And then another way that you could have solved this using our little trick is 14 times 100 divided by 56, and that will give us our answer. 14 times 100 divided by 56. Kind of cool. Okay, next question. Use your understanding of percentages to answer the questions below. Jed owns a music store and is taking inventory to prepare for a new order. He has organized the count of instruments in the table below. Help Jed analyze his store and place an upcoming order. So let's take a look at exactly what this means. This says current inventory. So string instruments, he has 65 right now. Percussion instruments, he has 90. Wind instruments, he has 159. And brass instruments, he has 186. Part A says find the percent of the store that each category of instruments comprises. So in order to do this, we're going to have to figure out how many instruments there are total. So let's go ahead and start adding all of these up. I'm just going to say, and I'll write these out so that way you can see all of this. 65 plus 90 plus 159 plus 186. And let's see how many instruments he has total. Okay, and I'm just going to type all this in my calculator. 65 plus 90 plus 159 plus 186, and that gives me 500 instruments. Okay, so the first question is string instruments. What percentage does he have? Here's our string instruments. If he has 65, we need to figure out the percentage. So here's what we would do. 65 divided by 500. That says 500. Let's see what we get. And I'm just typing all this in my calculator. I get 0.13. And 0.13, that's equal to, well, let's take our decimal, move it 2 places to the right, and that gives us 13%. So I know my string instruments make up 13% of the inventory. Percussion instruments, there's 90 of them. I'm going to erase 65 over here and I'm going to write 90. One way that we can figure this out is just to do 90 divided by 500. And if I type that in my calculator, I get 0.18. And if I move my decimal 2 places to the right, that gives me 18%. So 18% of the instruments are percussion instruments. Next question, wind instruments. There's 159 of them out of 500. 159. So I would just type into my calculator 159 divided by 500. And I get 0.318. This is a good problem to go over. 0.318. Well, as you know, with the decimal, we only have to move it 2 places over. So my answer is going to be 31.8%. And then the last one for brass instruments, it looks like there's 186. So my fraction would look like this, 186 out of 500. So I'm just going to do 186 divided by 500, and I just got 0.372. Well, 0.372 is the same thing as, let's move our decimal twice, 37.2% of our total instruments are brass. Okay, so the question, part B says, based on previous sales, Jed determines that he would like to order 30% more percussion instruments. How many percussion instruments should Jed order? 30% more percussion instruments. Let me read this one more time. Based on previous sales, Jed determines that he would like to order 30% more percussion instruments. How many percussion instruments should Jed order? Well, we know that there's 90 instruments and 30% more. I'm going to try timesing this by 30%. Well, 30%, I would take it and move my decimal 2 places over, so 0.3. Let's try 90 times 0.3 and see what we get. Oh, that gives me 27. So he would need to buy 27 more instruments, 27 more percussion instruments. So I'm just going to write out percussion. Sorry, my handwriting is awful. Instruments. 27 percussion instruments. Okay, part C. After the order arrives, Jed has a total of 130 string instruments. What percent of his string instruments are new? Okay, so he has 130 string instruments. Well, how many would be old? We got to figure that out first. Set up here as string instruments, there were 65. So let's subtract 65 to see how many of them are new. 130 minus 65 gives us 65. And 65 out of 500, we've already done that math and we determined that it's 13%. Oh no, it looks like I did this problem wrong. Okay, let me reread it. After the order arrives, Jed has a total of 130 string instruments. What percent of his string instruments are new? Oh, I see. What percent of the string instruments? So it's not going to be out of 500. It's going to be out of the number of string instruments he has. Well, what is 65 out of 130? Let's go ahead and type that out. All you're going to do is do 65 divided by 130. 65 divided by 130 gives me 0.5. And if I were to figure out what that is in a percentage, I would take my decimal and move it 2 places to the right. So that gives me 50%. So I would just write here for my answer, 50% of his string instruments are new. Okay, question 7. Southbrook Middle School tabulates the number of students who participate in the school athletic program. They have displayed the percentage of students who participate in the table below. So let's see, number of students. No participation, there were 12. 12 students did not participate in the athletic program. 42% participated in one sport, 28% participated in 2 sports, and 18% participated in 3 or more sports. So if Southbrook Middle School has 850 students, then how many students participate in the various number of sports? Okay, here's what this would look like. If they have 850 students total, we don't know what the part is going to be, so I'm going to put a question mark, or you could put a variable like X. Well, if 12% of the students did not participate, that's the same thing as 12 over 100. Now we have to solve this like a normal proportion. So we could do my personal favorite way to solve these. Let's try this again. Sometimes this thing doesn't switch colors. Okay, I would just do 850 times 12 divided by 100, and that will give us our answer. So 850 times 12 divided by 100, that gives me 102 students did not participate at all. All right, how many students did 2 sports? Let's set this one up. I would say that there's 42% of my students, so that's the same thing as 42 out of 100. And if there's 850 students total, but we want to figure out the part of students, how many part out of the whole, now we could go ahead and solve this and pick any method. You don't have to use the one that I pick. If I wanted to solve this another way, I could do, what number am I multiplying my bottom by? What number am I multiplying 100 by to get to 850? And then I'm going to do the same thing to the top. So I'll do 850 divided by 100 gives me 8.5. Let me switch colors just so I can show you. Oh no, it switched the whole thing. Let's try again. Okay, so if I multiply the bottom by 8.5, then I have to multiply the top by 8.5. So let's do 42 times 8.5, and that gives me 357. So that means my answer, where my question mark is, I would say, how many students are doing only one sport? Well, 357 students are doing only one sport. I want you to notice here what I did between problem number 1. So this first way, I solved it differently than I solved this second problem. It's okay to try new things. Pick whichever way works best for you. I'm just trying to show you that there are so many different ways that you can solve these, and it will just work. The way that you can check your answer, let me show you one more time. If I did 42 over 100 and I type that into my calculator, I will get 0.42. And if I type in my answer, I got 357 right here. If I type 357 over 850, or 357 divided by 850 into my calculator, I would also get 0.42. And guess what? Yes, that is proportional. So I know that my answer of 357 is correct. And you could do that over here on our first example as well, and it will work every single time. When you're checking your work, it totally works. So if this is confusing for you, I want you to break it down and understand that I am trying this like 3 or 4 different ways, and there is a way that you can check and make sure if it works. Take your numerator, divide it by your denominator, and it should work every single time. Okay, let's move on to the next question. How many students did 2 sports? If there was 28% of our students, so 28 out of 100, and there's normally 850 students, how many did 2 sports? Well, I would do 850 times 28 divided by 100. And if you do that, it's going to give us 238 students. So 238 is my answer there. And the very last question, how many students did 3 or more sports? If 18% of students did 3 or more sports, well, 18%, that's the same thing as 18 out of 100, right? So I could just say 18 out of 100. Let's set that equal to our total number of students of 850, and then let's solve this. 850 times 18 divided by 100, and that's going to give me 153. So that is my answer. All right, I'm going to go ahead and let you start on your homework. If you have any questions, please send me or Mrs. Morris a message, and we are here to help. We are glad to help. Anyways, let us know how we can help you. Thanks.